Most common comment I ever hear is, I never thought about the man's involvement. As a reminder, there's only been one pregnancy I'm aware of that did not involve a man. And that one involved the Holy Spirit. I think it's safe to say that every other pregnancy has involved a man. However, the narrative has been framed that a man has no input regarding the acceptance of a pregnancy nor an abortion if the mother chooses one. In truth, the lie for nearly 60 years has been, once pregnancy is established, all rights, claims, opinions, decisions are exclusively a woman's health issue. By design, it has been made easy for the men to step away with no regard for the very women they created a life with. By intention, setting the women up for a lifetime of remorse and regrets, under the idea it's her body, it's her choice. So why should a man be a consideration? It was a bright, early spring day. I knew what I was about to do was wrong. As I stood in the driveway, neither of us knowing what exactly to say, I handed her the money, saying nothing. As I stand here today, I can close my eyes and I can see her face, biting her bottom lip as I coldly handed her the money. As I drove away, I was overwhelmed with emotion, and I pulled over. I knew all I had to do is say no, but fear and shame won the mental argument. Had I only been the man God intended me to be. Instead, I took on the anvil of guilt and shame that would hang over me, pushing me away from Christ and what He wanted for me. The weight of that anvil just hanging there, waiting to crush my spirit. We were just another young couple manipulated by worldly lies. You all know them. It isn't a baby. It's not really a life yet. It's just a cluster of cells. It'll ruin your life. You're too young. It's a choice for her to make. It's a simple and painless procedure, not for the baby. Your lives will go back to normal, and you can accomplish. Accomplish what exactly? Nothing but earthly measurements of success. The truth they never tell you about is what comes next. In the case of my girlfriend, it set in motion lifelong depression, a sense of loss, self-destructive behaviors, anxiety, and the loss that she and I both carry to this very day. She also experienced pain during and after the procedure. She describes it as the most horrific experience of her life. She never became a mother following the procedure, as she was unable to carry a baby full term. So what effects did the abortion have on her? As I handed her the money, it was over for me. What a lie. There's a reason the pro-choice side does not want to speak about the men or the unborn child, honestly. It would require truth, and truth brings light to darkness, and they fear that. Truths like regret, remorse, self-doubt, loss, and anger. it would require objective examination of how an abortion actually affects the men. Questions like, can a man have a meaningful relationship with a woman after an abortion? Does that man turn his attention and energies to worldly desires over God's plan? These are but a few of the topics that, if truth were sought, would have to be addressed and brought to light. I started the book, The Anvil of Guilt and Shame, A Man's Perspective on Abortion, Forgiveness, and Calling, as part of the healing process, sadly, that has taken nearly 30 years to come to terms with. The worst choice I ever made. The choice was in truth my child. One morning, I was compelled to write a letter of apology to my unborn child, apologizing for not being the man she or her mother needed me to be. I said she for a reason. In one of my darkest hours, I contemplated suicide. What I can only describe as a God moment, or as I call it, a God nudge. I had a vision of a beautiful little girl with big eyes and a smile that lit the room. I knew she was my unborn child. I also knew, had I proceeded, I would be sacrificing any chance of being united with her in heaven. Several years later, I left my sins at the foot of the cross, and I opened my heart to Christ. On an early spring morning, I received the grace and forgiveness only available through Christ. This is why I now call my unborn child Grace. Grace became my inspiration to speak regarding the truth about men and abortion. When I started this book project, she inspired me as I took on many of the hard topics, from the broken and failing church to the demonic actions of our elected officials. I have a simple goal to reach 1% of all the men responsible for the roughly 62 million abortions since 1973, bringing them first to Christ and then changing the narrative. Think about that for just a second. If we could mobilize 620,000 men on this one cause, what effect would it have? A good friend of mine told me he'd rather climb Everest naked than take on the genocidal maniacs at Planned Parenthood. I get his point. They fear Christian men coming back to church, engaging and leading as God intended them to. Planned Parenthood fear men of God. If godly men start to demonstrate leadership, Planned Parenthood would no longer be able to mislead young men and women. Christ calls us all to be disciples. Part of our call to discipleship is teaching the young how to be responsible. Imagine if all the churches united around this one cause, if the men of all the churches placed their collective energy into ending the genocide of abortion. It'd be over. End of story. So I'd like to ask everybody a simple question today. Does the unborn child have its own unique DNA formed by the father and the mother? If you answer yes, then how exactly are we allowing Planned Parenthood and the pro-choice movement to get away with the lie that men have no voice and the unborn child is not a unique child of God with a right to life? Every abortion, in truth, involves at a minimum 3 individuals: the mother, the father, and of course, the unborn child. Real men, men of God, could change the argument. Christians scare the hell into the abortion industry and those that kneel at their altar. If Christian men and women organized and said enough, the political landscape would change. Abortion affects both men and women alike in how they live the rest of their lives. The issue is more a matter of soul and moral character than anything else. Being an issue of soul, that makes it an issue of faith. Thus, as disciples of Christ, we are the ones expected to address it. Let us all be the disciples God calls us to be. Thank you.